I guess more than anything, I want you to pick one thing that stood out to you from that compare win. If you can come up with something, whether it was something related to the goals, Memphis, or Braithwaite starting potentially, or Griezmann's performance, or the counterattacks that Barcelona were giving up that didn't lead to anything, or anything.
Yeah. So I think, this is, I'm, I might be jumping the gun, but I think I have to put the mea culpa out there. When we talked about Memphis coming on board, I was not enthused, not because I didn't think he was physically talented or, capable of being a good player, but
I want to defend us. I want to defend both of us because I was with you. That, and I said that I was uncomfortable at where he would fit alongside Messi. That was what I said. I was like, I don't know where he's going to find that space with Messi in the team, and so I'm taking less blame. I didn't get it right. But yeah, I am getting the issue I thought was going to exist is a non-issue now. So I don't know about that.
No, exactly. I was less than enthused from a personality fit standpoint, and there's obviously injury risk, but there's injury risk with everyone, so that's fine. But I was concerned with how he was going to fit in the side. And look, we'll see how it goes when the games count, and kind of when there's must-win situations and the tension is ratcheted up. But just from the perspective of, and I realize he's never had to play alongside Messi in a Barca shirt, and there's probably something to be said for this, but in a way that no other sort of presumptive star coming in. So I'm not talking about Piqué or Busquets, or even going further back, Xavi, Iniesta, those guys, but in a way that no one in the last 7 or 8 years, with the exceptions of Neymar and Suarez, those were the only stars who were able to come in, and they didn't feel like they were sort of trying to paint by numbers on how to be a Barca star. They just kind of came in and said, look, I know what I do well. I know I'm good at this. I know what I do. I'm just going to go do my job, and I'm going to be a star for Barcelona. And it worked. But because there's been so many other, presumptive stars that have come in, and you could get the sense that they were just trying to not put a foot wrong, or whether it was trying to stay out of Messi's way, or whether it was just trying to do too much and kind of, get the fans on board right away with something spectacular or whatever it was. There was always just a sense of kind of guys being stuck in their own heads. Memphis has just kind of hit the ground running in the sense of, this dude knows he's really good. I mean, the one thing that I loved more than anything, it was just like the little, like the back heel airborne passes that he does. And, he kind of has that, it's that innate sort of functional brilliance that you kind of need, because that's also what the Camp Nou crowd wants. I mean, it doesn't have to be flash. It doesn't have to be all sort of like Ronaldinho and Messi and stuff like that. But it's, what is the biggest problem? Why was Ernesto Valverde, just why was winning the league year after year, sort of insufficient? It was because there was sort of a level of kind of mesmeric quality that was absent for the crowd. And I think Memphis has a sense of a little bit of how to kind of do that in a functional way that I frankly was not giving him credit for. I mean, I knew he was good. He's hit the ground running in a really brilliant way. And I think the team, as it sort of stacks up around him, is actually very well constructed. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I think he and Yusuf Demir, the hookup for the first goal was spectacular. And we're going to talk about Demir probably a lot in the weeks to come, but he has looked phenomenal.
I'm going to talk about it now, because I think that Braithwaite didn't really fit. He didn't really make sense next to Memphis and Griezmann. Messi was able to bring out the best in him, because Messi can thread any angle of any pass. Yeah. And I think Messi made Braithwaite look a little better than he even is. Now, without that kind of service from Messi, the Memphis and Griezmann they don't build the same way that Messi does. Obviously, they don't hit the passes from the same angles. And so I think Braithwaite, yes, he got a goal, but he just looked not he just looked less of quality, which is what he is. Again, it's not a knock on Braithwaite that he's a professional footballer who should be playing at a first division club. That's not a knock on him, but a bad deal when it was made. And so I just think that Braithwaite, if he isn't sold now, and he isn't, I mean, obviously you still want to get the transfer bill down, and he's a guy that can score goals for somebody. And with the sheer dearth of number 9s in the world, where there just aren't a lot of center forward, there just aren't a lot of good center forwards that I think a player like Braithwaite he's one of the very, very, very few players that should have some kind of market. So I think they should continue to go down that hole. And same thing with Neto, who is a man.
I talked about this. I mean, Martin Braithwaite is, he's a first division footballer, in a top 5 league in Europe. He might not be a top 3 club first division player, but I mean, you can't tell me that there's not a team in the Premier League who fears that, the dearth of a few goals might throw them into a relegation battle. I mean, you can't tell me that there's not 2 or 3 teams in the Premier League that couldn't use a player like that. And use,
Or like 7 to 8 goals for Barca this year, but for your team, he might score 15. And that's the calculus that you want to make. Exactly. And also concerns me about the Griezmann point that is going to be something that I'm really going to think about. I want to rewatch even again to see the Griezmann stuff, because to have Memphis come in from day one and just immediately make this his team, make this his attack, I think is worrying for Griezmann. That's kind of what
I was talking about. It's like Griezmann wants to be a Barca star, but you can see he's kind of trying to I almost get the sense that he's like, how do I create the moment that wins me this crowd? And Memphis is just like, no, man, I just know what I'm doing.
He might get some free kick goals just like Memphis, but I mean, it's actually the free kicks was the moment when I had a minute to go, oh, Messi's gone.
I know. I had that same feeling.
I think everyone did. But the other thing I want to say about the forward line is that Yusuf Demir, I said it, I don't know, the people who've been kind of critical of his preseason, sure, it's the ignorance of bliss of this 18-year-old new toy, and I think everything he does is great. He had that one moment where he gave up the ball on a square pass. His square pass wasn't great. He gave up a ball that led to a counterattack. But again, so did Griezmann and so did Memphis. So they did the same thing as well. And that counterattack is a worrying sign for Barca. But Messi, how many times did Messi give away the ball like that a game? I'm not comparing them, but just the spot of the field where he was giving the ball up. That said, I think Koeman is willing to, is what he did with Pedri. It's not about Puig at all. It's about that Koeman is willing to play the players that are playing the best and making an impact and give him the best chance to win. And from what I've seen from Demir in the preseason, until Fati returns and Dembele return and things get a little more complicated or deeper, I think Yusuf Demir needs to start against Real Sociedad. I think I agree. And he should be a starter. I don't have any qualms about that. He creates, especially behind Memphis, they seem to have a good partnership already, better than the one between Memphis and Griezmann, better than the one between Demir and Griezmann, or Braithwaite being out there too. So I think Demir deserves to start. And whether I think so too. I think that changed the calculus on the midfield, but that's easy for me to take Pedri, throw him in, and potentially take out Braithwaite and make that a front 3 and a 4-3-3. I think that's more likely to happen with Pedri taking the place of Braithwaite, or Pedri's coming in. If De Jong is back as well, it'll be De Jong coming in for Roberto. It'll be Pedri coming in for Braithwaite, changing into a 4-3-3. But I think Koeman is going to rely on that 4-3-3. It's where I think they've had the most rhythm, the most flow. And I know it's just a few matches, but I think that's their best role forward. And as far as cutting out the counterattack, it was a problem last year. It's going to be a problem this year. But as we said, Fati, Dembele, Eric Garcia, Mingueza, they'll all be returning. And this is Barcelona now. So I think Koeman has a lot of different pieces to try to figure out how to alleviate some of the problems. I think a left center back being up to it, being Langley, is just, he's not what Barcelona needed that position. And then Umtiti is in theory what they needed that position, but he's gone. I mean, the booing was sad to see. It's not just on him. It's a lot of people, but
that is some shameful stuff, man. I mean, I hate that he's going to become, in a weird way, he's becoming the avatar of, he's going to become, I feel like for a lot of fans, the avatar of Messi's exit. And, because Bartomeu is not around to whistle at and yell at and scream at. I mean, Umtiti, I feel like, is going to become the whipping boy, for lack of a better word. And just, even though it's not his fault. I mean, we've talked about it before he got hurt, and before the World Cup in Russia. And I mean, I actually wrote this. that was when they needed to renew his contract. And I remember writing, and no one disagreed with me at the time. I was saying that Umtiti is the most important player at Barca not named Messi, because he was young, strong, talented, and just had energy and smarts and, the whole thing. He and Varane were coming out of that World Cup when France won. They were not only the best center back pairing in the world, they were essentially being spoken about almost as center backs number 1 and 2 in the world. Not just the best together, but arguably the 2 best on earth. And then his knees started to go. I don't think he's lazy. I don't think he doesn't care. I don't think it's any of that stuff. The guy got hurt, and he was given a large contract, but it was a large contract that he had earned at that point.
If he's healthy this year, if he's healthy and thinks he's healthy, how does he not look across the field at training at Langley and say, I'm going to be the left center back? That's what
they need. Your job should be mine. Yeah.
So I can take that job. And I think Barcelona wants that kind of ruthless confidence in their players. So it's a bit hypocrisy. It's a little bit of a hypocrisy for us to say, hey, we want our players to accept that they're failures and leave my club. But also we want them to have the confidence to overtake veterans or overtake the players that are ahead of them in the pecking order. So
how do you choose which of those to do?
how do you possibly going to get both? And it's not even Umtiti. It's, you look at the books and it's the contract of Griezmann and the fact that Barca were already in great debt. And then they bought Griezmann up top for that transfer. And it was not even necessarily his wages. It's that they bought him with the transfer money. And then on top of his wages, added that to the bill. And it's also the contract and wages of Coutinho as well. And those players, obviously, they are, as you said, they are avatars for their contract, but the business was the problem, not necessarily players themselves. And then, Coutinho getting booed and then putting the ears in, and then to think that Coutinho is now going to be back at Barcelona is mind-bending to me, that he will be playing for the club again. But now with Messi gone, they're unable to move him off the book. So you're going to have to get rid of what you can get rid of. And it's why I said Neto with his man of the match performance. I know that Neto's going to be kept because of Ter Stegen's injury, but I think there are clubs out there, and it all matters who, no club needs an auxiliary playmaking player like Coutinho on his wages. No club in the world wants that. So that's why all these clubs are having trouble getting rid of their big money, superfluous attackers and whoever it is.
Yeah, they're sort of the random number 10s. Yeah.
But a club might look at Neto and say, hey, we need a first choice goalkeeper. We need a good, steady pair of hands. And Neto, I think, is worth something. Same thing with Braithwaite. Their floor, what they're going to give you at the club, is something that I think clubs need in the way that they don't need Coutinho or they don't need, obviously, Griezmann at those wages. But the last thing I want to say here is I'm going to do the Riqui Puig thing one more time, Emile, please. Let me do it one more time.
Let's do it. Let's do it.
Off the bench in every preseason match. And I think on year number 2, Koeman and Puig have an understanding that he is going to come off the bench for the last 20 to 30 minutes of every match. I will get on Koeman. This is my promise to you as a podcast. I will get on Koeman if Puig has not played in multiple games over a stretch of 2 or 3 weeks and he's relegated to the bench. But I think that he is the 4th or 5th midfielder this season. There is not a lot of depth. Honestly, there's not that much depth in that midfield, especially if Griezmann is a forward. So I think Puig is going to come off the bench in almost every match, and he is going to do basically the midfield version of Dembele. He changes a match so much, just the formation that Barca play, the way that Barca are playing, the speed at which they're moving the ball. He, to me, is a closer. He reminds me of whether it's the baseball analogy of he's not a Mariano Rivera in this situation, but I'm not even a Yankee fan, but he is for the Mets fans out there, Billy Wagner. He's a guy that's going to come in and he is a closer and he's going to change the look of a game just like Dembele does. He's a wild card. He's going to unbalance things. And I think that is what his best role at Barca might be this season, especially because he's not going to overtake Pedri, De Jong, and Busquets in the starting lineup. That's not going to happen. But yes, I hope he gets an occasional start in rotation, but I also think Roberto will just be the starter in rotation. And that's because they want to continue to have that defensive fortitude in the midfield. So I think you're going to see the 4th rotation midfielder to be Roberto, and then Puig is your 5th midfielder. Gavi is still going to spit in there. Gavi might even start some, but Gavi's also going to probably still play with Barca B. And that means Puig is still going to be the 5th midfielder. And if he's coming off the bench in every game, I'm happy because I remember I was upset with how many matches he didn't play in. And last season, I think it came down to hoping he would get into matches and you didn't care about the minutes. And I think this season is going to be how many matches can he get into, and can he get to a certain threshold of minutes? Can he get to 2,000 minutes? I'm not sure if he's going to do that. But if he can come and play in 35 matches or 38 matches, then that means he played his role. And if he and the manager are on the same page, then we just have to live with him not starting. And I think I'm happy with what he adds to the club. And if he understands and enjoys his role, then he's an important part of the first team. Even if he's not a starter at FC Barcelona, they have so many good young midfielders. It's okay for him to be the backup.
Well, and the thing is too, I mean, I agree with everything you just said. And on top of that too, I mean, he's still kind of young enough where if he has I think the biggest problem is like, he wants to play. He wants regular game time. He wants regular time on the pitch in meaningful games. So if that comes in the form of, like you said, 20 to 30 minutes on a near every game basis, and he's actually filling a valuable role. You know what I mean? It's kind of the analogy that I was thinking of is almost like, try to be Manu Ginobili, who, you know, like, he never made a stink about not starting. He just was a superstar off the bench. Like he embraced a role, became a superstar within that role, and just rode that to championships and the Hall of Fame. And
still, so, I mean, Henrik Larsson. We still praise Henrik Larsson.
Yes. Yeah. And the thing is, Riqui Puig is still very young. And so, yes, if this is your first year of playing essentially every game, but you're playing every game off the bench, 30 minutes a game. But if you do that well and you're contributing to winning and you're making positive contributions and everything is kind of flowing through you properly, like, that doesn't mean that this has to be your role forever. It doesn't mean that you will never be a starter. But I think if he can kind of do that role, if Koeman can commit to actually employing him in that role regularly and kind of giving him not just enough minutes, but kind of enough game action on a consistent enough basis to kind of keep him happy and engaged, and he can kind of make the most of those minutes, this can be a springboard season. Because, look, if nothing else, we know that Barca is now figuring out what this new next era is going to look like. Now we have a general idea of like kind of what shape the midfield is going to take. But if he can make a huge positive contribution this season in that type of role, then, you know, things change. You know, people get hurt, people leave, or you're simply just impactful enough and good enough where your coach says, well, no, I think this guy can actually give us 65, 70 minutes a game. You know, I actually think we can translate these 25 or 30 minutes into 65 or 70 a game. And all of a sudden you've kind of carved out not just carved out a niche, but carved out a significant role for yourself. Just, you know, maximizing the opportunity that you're given. But I agree. I mean, I hope that Koeman gives him the opportunity to maximize.
Right. I mean, again, a reminder too, that with Pedri and Gabi and De Jong floating around and everybody like that, listen, in 4 years' time, if the midfield of Barcelona is Pedri, Gabi, and De Jong, and you have Riqui Puig coming off the bench, I will remind you that Seydou Keita is another one that there were good players that have just come off the bench and been an important part of, if Barcelona is so dominant that that's your midfield three and they're winning everything they can at the midfield, they're one of the best midfielders in the world, and who's coming off the bench again, I have no problem with that. It's just, again, the caveat this season, in his fourth season with the first team, is that he actually does have to play. And if Koeman bench him completely, then it's again on him that he should have left, and there should have been understanding between the two. But the last thing I want to leave people with too is, I know it feels disheartening. I just want to remind everybody that it is a new era, but it's kind of been a new era. That I don't want to give a compliment to Bartomeu at the end of this, but some of the players that were brought in the last prior to even that being Fati was groomed properly, and then they gave him that deal. And even though they're losing Iras Moriba, there's still so many midfielders coming in. Credit to all those years ago when somebody brought in Gabi potentially. Credit to Pedri deal for Las Palmas, getting Eric Garcia to want to come back. I mean, I know he has to prove it, but this team is going to come down to that combination. It's not just Fati being the new savior, but it gives me hope, the fact that you don't need a new Messi. Demir is not the new Austrian Messi, but Fati plus Demir plus Pedri plus De Jong plus Gabi plus Puig plus Des plus Mingueza plus Garcia plus Araujo, that can equal something of what is a winning team, right?
That's a really good. You take that and you put in De Jong and just whether it's Griezmann or that's a good team.
Yeah, and that's okay. That's considering now, and that's who we're going to root for. And so I'm not going to say they're going to win trophies, but that's why I'm heartbroken. But I also have hope, and both of those things can be true.